Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today and share some things about our school district. This is really going to be tailored more towards the elementary school project with a few nuggets thrown in between. And then once we have, in the next 3 or 4 weeks, our annual report posted in the newspaper, I'll come back and share statistics on that if you certainly need me to. So I'll just begin with, thinking back, looking at, where we are today and where we started with our elementary school project. That discussion of Austin and Jolly had started long before my time here. Naturally, in a school district with aging facilities, people are always wondering what you're going to do next and what's going to happen to certain buildings. So this discussion got a lot more serious in the early 2020 area when we had seen several years of continued growth within the district, which I'll show you in just a moment. But we'd added new services, new initiatives for kids, and more staffing during that time and since that time. And that was one of the pieces of the discussion when we were going forward with both Austin and Jolly. In the winter of 2020, the community group was formed to study and make a recommendation to the school board. And the community members were people from the business community and farmers in the area, teachers, administrators, people on our school board, part of USD, retirees in the community. And they met to talk about the facilities, toured those facilities, and we had some studies done of our facilities and talked about what are the future needs of the district in terms, especially with our aging elementaries. And that led into the spring of 21 when that group had, made the recommendation that we move forward with a bond election to the voters of the community to see what they would support. And then finally in October, the fall of 2021, we had a bond issuance out for $26 million, and we were pleased and blessed to have our community support that at roughly a 75% approval rating. And then, of course, the groundbreaking was held in July of 2022. Some of that growth that we're talking about, this shows a 15-year history of Vermillion. When looking back, we had like many school districts in the mid-2000s, 2009, lots of school districts in the state of South Dakota saw the decline in enrollments there. And then we stayed steady for a number of years. But then about 17, we started to see some uptick. And over those years, since 2017, we've seen anything from just a handful of kids growth to our high of 87 kids growth. And then this year, we're projecting ourselves to be about 1401, which will be about 11 more than last year. That number will get tweaked a little bit by the state and massaged as we look at seat count in our campus system. If there's a person in the seat, we count them as a full body. The state looks at it, that might have been a homeschool student who comes into the district for just 2 periods a day. So they're really 2/7 of a person. And maybe we have a student that will get, if they've missed 2 consecutive weeks of school and then show up in another district, they're going to get removed from our district enrollment, even though we thought they were our student. So there'll be some massaging of that number, but we're clearly going to be, again, showing growth this year, just maybe not to the extent we have in the past. Some of the things that have gone along with the discussion of not only Austin and Jolly's growth at the elementaries, we've seen this growth K through 12. And just some things that we've done in the last 7 years to meet the needs of this district. The district has changed a lot in its demographics as well as in its students that it serves. And so as a result, we've added these positions. And I won't go through all of them, but really they're tied directly to students, whether it's health concerns. When I first came, we had 1 nurse for almost 1,300 students, and now we have 3. And we have some severe health needs of some of our students. We have students that have tracheotomies, and we have kids that have catheterization, and we have kids that are wheelchair bound, and we have kids all in between. And those services are needed for them to get the most out of their public school experience. So we've hired those positions. And counselors and social workers, you've heard me talk about the mental health challenges that the whole community is facing. Our district is no different. So we've hired folks to try to deal with and address those situations. As some of our increased numbers have increased in our programming, Title I is a federally funded program. We've hired 4 teachers in the last 2 years just for that. That's remedial math and reading services for kids. facilities manager, special education teachers, curriculum director was our latest addition, which we did just this last school term, with that position officially starting this year. So lots of good things happening there. But all of those people need a place to land, and both Jolly and Austin were landlocked and had no places. We had counselors and therapists, people using closet spaces and sharing offices, and any place that they could find a place to provide a service they were doing. So bless their hearts. Now they're going to go to a facility that will be able to spread them out and have them housed properly for their needs. At the beginning of our search, we partnered with TSP, architecture firm out of Sioux Falls. This was an early rendition when we went through our process. We basically interviewed about 5 or 6 construction management companies to see if they wanted to lead our project. And Houseman Construction out of Norfolk, Nebraska was the firm that earned the position. And this was one of our very initial drone footages. It shows the middle school. Here on our far side, here's our middle school, and then you can't see it very well, but it outlines what we figured our new building would look like. And it shows, the perimeter, the fencing, and all the construction sites and management things that were going to be part of this project. You've seen this picture before, either in the newspaper or in previous presentations, but how we came up with our wish list for our elementary school is, again, a committee of people toured schools in Sioux Falls, Harrisburg, Brandon Valley, schools that are built regularly, and trying to find out what is used and needed for those types of facilities. Our facility is different than a hospital or a college facility or even another type of building that might be built in the community. So we tried to find solutions to what we think were amenities that our kids needed and our staff deserved in that building. And then we tried to condense it down to be within budget, which you can imagine is usually the hardest part. But some amenities that we heard right off the bat is make sure you have a lot of gym space. We heard from our young families in the community when we were doing our 5 or 6 public meetings on this that, hey, our kids have got to get into the gymnasium because we've got dance and we've got gymnastics and we've got basketball and we've got youth volleyball. And we need facilities because the facilities at the high school and the middle school just can't carry the load. And they were correct. So in our very initial wish list and drawing of this school, we actually had a second gym that size, and we had a commons right here. But naturally, over the course of time, when you're trying to stay within budget, we had to end up doing a consolidation of our gymnasium space into 2 spaces here. This is a full-size, legal-size court, wood floor. Same amenities you'd see at the high school. If we have to, we could play a game there if we needed to. The bleacher seating would be less than the high school naturally, but the floor and the amenities in that gym will rival the high school. This is an auxiliary gym / commons. So what we did with that particular space was, it's like Jolly and Austin is now. They have their gymnasium serves as the commons, and during off periods it's a gymnasium for PE and such. So we put a tartan floor in this, that's a sort of a rubberized poured floor into that facility. So that'll allow for traffic, and we can roll tables over it. We won't scratch it up like we would a wood floor. But we will service all the kids eating in this facility for breakfast. And then for a couple hours between, let's say, 9:30 and 11:30, or maybe 11, that would also serve as a gymnasium. So we could have a second PE period going on in that gym. Then from 11 to 1, it's being used for servicing kids and eating lunch. Then we'd only have PE in this gym at that time. And then this one would be a commons. Then after 1 o'clock, when it's cleaned up, then we can have the space used again for gym or some sort of activities for the kids. Why that's important is because right now at Jolly and Austin, the PE teachers can't have PE right away in the morning because the gym is set up for lunch or breakfast. And it takes a while to get the kids through and then cleaned up and off. So there's dead periods first thing in the morning, and then there's a couple of dead periods, a couple hours right over the noon hour that our kids can't go to PE. So that's a little bit of a constraint for our programs, trying to get all of those other PEs into that limited time frame. So now having one that's available all 8 hours of the day and one that's going to be open about 5 hours a day is going to allow us some flexibility, which is really, really good. And then after hours, these can be used for the community or for ourselves. For example, junior high volleyball going on this week. would normally have the eighth graders over here at the middle school gymnasium, and the seventh graders get shipped up to the high school, and they play their games there at the same time. And at that, if you have a parent that's I got a seventh grader and an eighth grader, they are trying to get between matches and trying to support both of their kids. It wasn't a very good situation. It also causes us some problems at the high school because now it alters our schedule for other events that the high school needs the gym for. But because it's an event like the middle school, we will butt the high school kids out and do some things for the middle school there. So long story short, this gym will now be available 100 feet away from the middle school gym to allow for us to have basketball and volleyball games going on simultaneously. We won't have to disrupt the high school schedule, and we'll get the chance for families to be able to go back and forth. So really a value-added asset because of the location and the things that the new elementary school is by the middle school. Just some other things, we've got an art room and 2 music rooms here. Art has been back in the district now for 2 years. We lost that a number of years ago in the district due to some financial cuts and trying to make everything balanced there. We lost that in our elementary. And now we've had that back for 2 years. And so that's got its own dedicated space, and the staff are excited and the kids are excited about that. Other amenities that the people told us during this phase was make sure that this building is user-friendly. Our staff said we want to have our services conjoined so we can get to places and do things. So we developed our rooms and our design based on a pod system. So we've got first grade and second grade pod here. So we've got 5 sections of traditional classroom spaces. Right now our buildings either have 4 or 5 sections. So a second grade, for example, has 5 sections. Third grade has 4 sections. And fourth grade has 4 sections. We have 1 extra built-in space here for both the first and second grade, so that if there happens to be a 5th class come through, a 5th section needed because of increased numbers, then we can pull that out and we'd have it there for them. What we also did is put in this flexible space, and you've heard us talk about this. This is a flexible classroom space that allows for a 6th section, that if we ever have a weird situation where we have a gigantic kindergarten class that transitions to first grade, to second grade, and third grade, we've got a place in each of the wings to house that 6th section, which is important for growth. We hope that we actually fill that up someday and that we can deal with that issue, but that would be a good problem to have. The next wing, which is the 3rd and 4th grade wing, is identical to this wing. We've got special ed services, Title I services in each of the wings so that kids don't have to travel very far for their services. The 5th grade wing, you'll notice, looks a little different. It's only half the size of the other pods. Well, naturally, it's only 5 5th grades. So this pod is designed to be a half space and has the room for the 5 grades of 5th grade plus the flexible class if needed. What's unique is this land over here, which is Barstow Park, and the skate park is like right over here. This is where we've already designed it to have the addition made if we ever need to grow the school. We'd be able to go right onto this 5th grade wing and create another wing like this or this or this. They're all identical. And so that's a unique feature for us. And then finally you get into our pre-K and first grade and kindergarten wing here, or excuse me, pre-K and K. It's got early childhood rooms, Head Start rooms, kindergarten rooms. The unique features about this area is that all of these rooms have their lockers and pod systems inside the classroom, so kids can come and store all their things within the classroom, and they all have their own restrooms in those facilities. The rest of these classrooms have lockers outside in the hallway, which our kids are thrilled with because Jolly and Austin don't have lockers. So the kids think that having lockers is the greatest thing ever. So when you get back around here, this is the administrative wing here where the school nurse and the principals will be, conference room, teacher workroom and things. And this is our secured entrance. Just like the high school, families that come here are locked in a vestibule. They basically can't go anywhere unless they're allowed to open up the door to get into the office, and then we can buzz them in to get to the rest of the building if needed. So that was another amenity that was important to the committees that were talking about our buildings. Make sure we have secured entrances. The bus kids have a secured entrance in the back, which I'll talk about briefly. So before I go any further, any questions on maybe the layout or anything to do with that? Art?
So what are your projections, say, as far as enrollment over the next 10 years?
Yeah, It's hard to predict enrollment any further than about 5 because we know what the birth rate is in our community, so we can kind of guess. It looks to be steady. We typically have between 114 to 122 kindergartners. That's been pretty steady, up and down a little bit, but that's what we're projecting. We think that and we're graduating less than that. That's why we continue to grow. Our bigger classes are in the elementary. By the time we get to high school, we're only graduating 95 to 100 kids. And when those kids were in elementary, they might have been 100 to 115, some of those classes. So we lose kids throughout this process. But the kids that start with us in kindergarten, less than half of them graduate with us. There's just that much transient behavior within families these days. But we do expect this building to be around 670 kids, which is a big building. This is a picture of our winter conditions. Last year when we started this in July of 2022, when we did our groundbreaking, they came in right after that, cleared off all the trees. There was tennis courts and things, as you remember, over here. And then they came in, and this basically footprint of the building, they had to pile in 700 aggregate piers, which are basically a diameter auger about 20 inches wide, drills down about 15 feet into the earth because we have very sandy soil there, and I'm sure that the jail will find the same thing likely in their location. The soil conditions aren't the best in the world for building, so to compensate for that, they created aggregate piers, hollowed out the earth there with an auger, filled that with crushed rock and cement, pounded that thing with a big pile driver, and that caused all that rock to get pushed and settle out, which therefore compacts the soil. So over 700 of those 20-inch by 15-foot deep pilings are in there. Now, to be honest, they actually made a mistake and had to do double that because they were off by about 6 inches, 12 inches of where those should all be placed. So we actually got twice the amount for our dollar amount for that. So there's actually about 1,400 pilings into that square footage there. And so anyway, that led us to the winter time here, which was not the best time of the world to be putting in footings because you have to work in winter conditions. And last year was a pretty rough year for temperatures were severe one way or the other, and then you'd get snow on top of it. But as you can see, a large work area here, and this is the beginning of the pre-K and first and second grade wing, that very first pod that we showed you. This is about 3 or 4 weeks later. It shows that there's been some thawing, of course, gives you kind of the same idea. But these trenches here that you're seeing are basically the footings for the building to sit on. And those are, 4 feet deep. But the problem is by this time in late December, the ground was already frozen solid. And so therefore they had to bring in extra machinery and extra devices to deal with this, big thawing machines that would run all night thawing this dirt so that they could come with a skid loader and dig it out, and then come with a backhoe and dig a trench down 4 feet. And then they would build a tent around it and put the cement in. Then they'd have to heat the tent to make sure that the cement cured properly on time. And then they'd have to move that tent and do that at about 100 feet at a time. And that's what the tent looks like. So that's about 50 feet, of tent here, and about 50, maybe a little more here. And they had to do that for 117,000 square feet of footings, all the way around that whole exterior of the building because the conditions were so cold that they had to have everything cure right. So very tedious process. This put us about 10, 12 days behind schedule during the winter just because of the winter conditions. But they did a great job, and of course, because of them being able to work this winter, we were able to stay on relatively close to our schedule. We're still off by a few weeks perhaps, but they still hope to catch that up. That leads us to the pictures here from a month ago. So what you saw before was just that area, and now since then they've attached the gymnasiums to the middle school. They've attached the administrative doors where the kids will walk in and out of the building. The kindergarten and kindergarten and pre-K wing, first and second grade, fifth grade, and third and fourth. So the building is intact, it's there. Everything except for these 2 roofs are done. It's holding water, windows are in, and so it's really working well. What you're seeing so far is these spaces were another attribute that our community wanted, or our committee talked about, outdoor learning spaces. We envision these spaces to have some amphitheater seating in them, or picnic tables, or something of interest, so that teachers can bring their kids out to this space and they can be outside. One thing we learned at COVID is we can teach a lot more from outside if we want to. And we found out it's very useful. Kids like it, teachers like it. So we created 3 intentional spaces for that within here. And there might be a garden in there. It might be a tree that kids can read under. It might be some amphitheater seating or some rocks that kids can just sort of hang out on. Whatever it is, it's just meant to be something fun for the kids. This is basically the view from Dartmouth Street. I'm looking at the front of the building here, and just a little bit better view of what we're talking about. What we're looking at here is the middle school, of course. This is the north driveway of the middle school. Buses will come in this way. They'll drive around here and do a U-turn and drop kids off right here. And those kids will walk in those doors. You can't see them very well, but those doors, and the bus kids will all be coming in that north back entrance. The parents that want to do drop-off in the morning, there's going to be like a half-moon driveway here and 2 lanes of traffic going across this front and then exiting out here right before Carr Street. So if I'm dropping my kid off at the morning, I just drive right here, say goodbye, give them a hug, and drive out the end here. If you've been by Jolly or Austin in a number of years, you notice how crowded it is. The bus traffic and parent traffic intermingle. Thank goodness our staff do a wonderful job and keep the kids safe, but it's congested. It's just not ideal. We hope that by separating the traffic with parent pickup and drop off here, that all of our walkers are coming in this way, and all of our bus kids are coming in the back door where staff parking and stuff is back here, but there'll be a long sidewalk that they can come in. We hope that will be something that we can figure out how to make that work as best we can for kids. If you were to drive by today, most of these colors have changed. The yellow represents ephes, which is like an insulated panel, like stucco, will be all these yellow spots. If you drove by today, underneath all these black spots is already bricked up. You'd notice that there's brick already there. And that's designed intentionally just to give it a more modern, spacious look. There's going to be some steel panels around here, all glass front to our auxiliary gym, which I think is going to be my favorite space in the building, because the natural light that's projected to come through that light is going to be awesome. And then a lot of glass and aluminum features up front, so you get this really great grand illusion of the administrative building as you walk in, or the principal's area and the kids' entrances. I guess other things of note, I guess the Claire story windows was a priority of our community and committee staff that went through this. These Claire story windows are raised areas with glass panels in them. You might have heard me talk about this last year. Everybody that has an outdoor side of the building here has got natural light coming in because they've got a window to the outside world. But we have classroom spaces that are sometimes in the middle here. So what are we going to do to help provide that? We know natural light is good for kids and their learning. So the architects developed these raised roof panels that allow these little windows to allow natural light into our areas. The big spots that you see here, you can't really see one over here yet, and I guess here and here, these have them as well. Those are common spaces. So in between, if that was our 4th grade classrooms right there, and these were our 3rd grade classrooms, there's a space about half as big as this room in between each of them. Not just a normal hallway, but a big common collaborative space. That collaborative space is meant to be a space where teachers and kids will collect and collaborate. Maybe me and my 2nd grade partner want to have a science experiment out there. So we could bring 50 kids together and do a science experiment out there together. We could still do it in the auxiliary gym or the main gym perhaps, but maybe it's just small group participation. That will have whiteboards and Promethean boards there. It has comfy seating like couches and tables and some things there. We hope that the spaces that you'll see when you come and tour this building when it's done will show this great collaborative space for kids. That's another thing that our staff really wanted, is a place for our kids to congregate. So that all being said, that leads us to sort of some of the details that we talked about. The pre-construction part of this, I told you we went to visit several schools. We had several public meetings. At the beginning of this project, we ended up, the wants that we wanted were much bigger than we could afford and what we could do. So we ended up having to downsize and get things into scale and get it to within budget. But we didn't lose anything. Some of our the biggest things that we wanted level grouping areas, so we've got the pods. We wanted to make sure that we had all of our therapies, all of our counselors, all of our support staff are conveniently located in the pods so that they don't have to run from one end of this building to the other end of the building, back and forth, losing valuable instructional time because they're doing all this walking. We wanted to have clerestory windows for natural light. We wanted to make sure we had big collaborative spaces for kids. We wanted to make sure we had hardened storm shelters. I forgot to share that. In about right here in each of the buildings, in each pod, there is an extra space. And in fact, I'll show it to you real quickly. It is actually these extra classrooms that we talked about. We call them flexible spaces. Those spaces are actually hardened for storm shelter events for kids. Those have cement floors, cement walls, and cement ceilings. Unlike now, our kids have to vacate to a hallway or restrooms if we had severe weather and we were trying to dodge a tornado. In this building, they have a secured, almost a bunker that they'll get to go to, which we were really excited that the architects were able to put that together for us. We've got a secured entrance and bus and parent pickup drop-offs. Our building really does have a modern feel and modern design to it. It's got a mixture of bricks. Our building is meant to complement the middle school next to it, not be a brand new building and a 50-year-old building right next to each other. So to achieve that, our architects took some of the color combinations from the middle school and incorporated them into dark brick accents in our new elementary school. Also around the top of the middle school, there's a 2-foot band of marble that's a band across the top. And they took that concept and they flipped it on the elementary and put a dark brick barrier on the bottom to replicate but be opposite of what the middle school has, so that when they tie together you see this band that's on one level in the elementary but it's up here on the middle school. We're going to be putting some steel and aluminum accent panels on the middle school as well, so when this is done it doesn't look like a new building, old building. The middle school is getting a facelift along with this so that it gets some well-deserved attention as well. During this process, we wanted to be cognizant of trying to use really good resources, be thinking about the future. One of the things that we looked at, but we just weren't able to put into the budget because of cost, was some geothermal heating. We wanted to be able to find a way to pull heat from the earth and save dollars and provide heat to our buildings with geothermal heat. But in talking with the experts, they found that we would have to provide geothermal wells in Barstow Park, and many of them, because of the size of our building, that it wouldn't be practical and cost effective for us to be pulling heat from the earth to do that. So we ended up going back with the more traditional natural gas boiler system, which is fine. It's very efficient, burns clean, and it's the same systems that we have in all of our other schools. But we did try to look at some additional different things to compensate that. In the end of that, we found that our cooling system was an area that we could use a little bit of Mother Nature's help, and some ice chiller systems that are out there today. An ice chiller system produces ice and very cool water in a condensed area, and then our air intake systems can draw from that and pull that through our buildings, providing air conditioning for our kids. It's not a traditional AC unit like you might have at your house or my house or a business, but it's more of an ice chiller system. So I thought that was pretty innovative and kind of a nice way to step into the future with some new technology. And then as we wrap up, I guess I'd just conclude with, we ended up with a building that was 117,000 square feet. That's what we had initially budgeted for. It blew up a little bit in our dream section of elementary school touring in the state. Got it reeled back in, and at the same time kept everything we want. We got more therapy services, space for those folks. We have more office space for the folks that you saw earlier on our list of staff that were sort of homeless. We also found that we were able to get all the classroom space and amenities, and then some with our flex spaces and with our comfortable collaboration spaces in our K-5 setting. So we're going to have approximately 670 kids there. The cost did balloon to $36.5 million, and we came up with the other $11 million of that. If you remember, we had a bond for $26 million. We were able to use capital outlay reserves that the district had on hand for part of that, and we also went out and took out capital outlay certificates, neither of which has an impact on district taxpayers. You paid more taxes for this building with the approval of the bond, and we appreciate that. None of the other assets that we've added since then or that cost us the extra money you see there that go into tax increases of any kind. Those are dollars that the district incurs. Playground. One of the things about our playground is that will be located approximately in this area here. And we are working right now with the Rotary and with our Vermillion Public Schools Foundation and others to get the very best and most accessible equipment we can. You've heard Tim and some others talk about the fact that we need to have kids that can get onto hard surface areas or soft surface areas that aren't wood chips and rocks and sand. We have kids in our district and their parents that would love to be on our playgrounds more if we could provide that. So it's our intention to have a state-of-the-art, universally accessible playground for our kiddos. You'll be hearing more about that, but that's going to be exciting news for us to open that up next spring. That's something that it benefits the kids during the day, at night, and weekends, for years to come. Anybody who visits this town will have a great time at our future playground. And finally, we get asked a few times, what's happening with the old schools? We have committed, the school district through our board is working on a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. That will become more public in the coming weeks, but the Boys and Girls Club plans to inherit the Austin building and turn that into the Boys and Girls Club of Vermillion, which is a great asset to the community and a perfect example of what our school board and what our community wanted from those old buildings. And then you've already heard several months ago we've committed to working with the city for the future housing and park development, to put pickleball and tennis courts back over on Jolly, remove the building, sell off lots to somebody to put up housing there that would be like the houses on University in that section of town. And I think, again, a perfect example of things that are needed in the community and what a great use of the old Jolly area. None of which I could have shared today would be possible without the contributions of this community and the support. Obviously, through the bond election and passing that, we can't measure what that's going to do for our kids in the future, but really the everyday successes of our district are depending on our citizens and the people that support us and partner with us, so thanks for that. But we wanted to thank you guys and all of our community for that, and anybody who's had a hand in any of our successes at the district level, because it really does take a community, and like Kevin said in my intro, this is a special community. We get really, really good response when we need something for kids or we need something for staff or we want to do something extra or fun. We find people that are willing to partner with us, and thank you for that, and the Rotary's always been a great partner with that as well. So kind of a mad dash on how our school became what it is. So any questions that I can answer for you? Yes?
On the 30-year bond issue, what percent interest are we paying?
2.5, something like that. It's incredibly low. In fact, we're making money right now on our loan because some of the dollars that we're going through with South Dakota Fit are being regenerated until we use them, and we're receiving a higher income on the interest that we're getting from that than we're paying. So we might end up, I don't know what the number is, we might have $50,000 of interest that we gained during this process to do extra things for that project. Now, naturally, we're going to pay interest for 30 years at 2.5%, but it is incredibly low compared to today's standards.
So the payback is going to be 45 million?
Yeah, probably very close to that, yeah.
46.
Yeah. Good question.
Okay, well,
All right, thanks.
It is exciting to be part of that. So I forgot to mention, this is the first Wednesday of the month, so if the food pantry is of interest to you, there is an envelope on your table. You might consider taking a moment to look at that. Kurt, welcome back. Okay, I don't know if you're in town for long, but feel free to come by. Your regular chair will be there. Next week's speaker is Leslie Morrow from the Alzheimer's Association of South Dakota. So very interested to see what she has to say. 50-50 drawing, let's do